Prosperous Yemen, flourishing Arabia, historic land of Sheba, home to Queen Balkis, one of the oldest civilizations in human history. Here lives an Arab and Muslim nation which has played a decisive role in Islamic history since the birth of Islam. The sons of Sheba, Hadramaut and Himmerite settled in this beautiful land thousands of years ago. On the peaks of Yemen's towering mountains, they planted foothills with their axes and will, and dug canals in the green valleys. In the desert, they were renowned for protecting their convoys. On the coasts and the shores, they fought the waves as sailors and fishermen. In mosques and schools, they made history with innovations in science and jurisprudence. This land of Sheba has been struck with a dark age, plagued for years by war, conspiracies, political crises, oppression, corruption, and injustice. Today's Yemen is afflicted with a coup d'etat. Allured by what is essentially fleeting power and fame, the futile wars waged by the Yemenis are killing and destroying its brethren. Yemen has been plagued by unruly sectarian militias who care only for power and control at the expense of ruining the nation and destroying its people. Between 2004 and 2009, in light of the deteriorating situation in Yemen, 6 battles broke out in Sadr, in the north of Yemen, between former President Ali Abdullah Saleh and the Houthis, which turned out to be a political game to eliminate the historic military units of the Yemeni National Army for the sake of replacing them with military units loyal to the family of the former president and his sons and relatives. Now we can see that these wars in Sadr acted as indirect training for the Houthis. Due to the state's poor crisis management in having adopted repressive methods to avoid further chaos, the southern movement groups exploited the state's negative image and utilized this to support the coup. Meanwhile, there was increased political turmoil between the former president Ali Abdullah Saleh and the opposition parties in the wake of the ruling party's insistence on rejecting guarantees of fair elections and pushing to amend the constitution to ensure the re-election of the former president, who no longer had the right to run for office. Over the course of decades, a corrupt government system has tampered with the fate of Yemen, corrupted its people and political life, and threatened stability. In the wake of this, increased economic hardship and poor quality of life plagued the Yemeni people, who were forced to deal with high prices, a weak national currency, increased corruption, deterioration of public services, human rights violations, restrictions on public freedoms, and subjecting the country to martial law. On February the 11th, 2011, the youth broke out in a revolt. A natural result of the political, security, and living conditions. This revolution led to a bloody crackdown on the protesters and the killing of hundreds of peaceful youth. The Gulf countries assisted as mediators at the request of the former president himself, which led to the signing of the Gulf Initiative on November 23, 2011. The most prominent elements of the initiative were first, the resignation of former President Ali Abdullah Saleh and the transfer of power to his deputy, Abdurrab Mansour Hadi. Second, the establishment of a transitional authority consisting of both the ruling party and the opposition. And finally, the convening of a national dialogue conference to prepare for a new social and political era for the Yemeni state. Although the Houthis were officially among the protesters in the capital Sana'a, they found an opportunity to promote their selfish agenda by launching slogans representing themselves as the true rebellion and allies to the revolutionary youth. Their ultimate aim was always to control the country's course of events for years to come. On March 18, 2013, the first hearings of the National Dialogue Conference were held as a peaceful path to solve the deep-seated problems created by the previous president. After a long preparation, representatives from all of Yemen's various political and social components participated in the events. The dialogue lasted 10 months, until January 25, 2014, where the closing session announced the final document of the National Dialogue Conference in the presence of both the Arab world and international community. The outcome document included items calling for the restructuring of the Parliament and the Consultative Assembly to be equal between the North and the South, banning the presence of armed militias, the transfer of weaponry over to the state, extending its influence throughout Yemen, as well as plans for the next constitution. It was agreed following the conclusion of the national dialogue on January 25, 2014, that Yemen would be a federal state consisting of 6 states, decided by the Regions Committee on February 10, 2014, on the basis of the conclusive mandate of a conference committee constituted by the President for that purpose. The Houthis surrounded the educational centre for several months, whose inhabitants included women, children, the elderly, and science students. They fought battles during which dozens of people were killed and hundreds injured, but damage did not fall into the hands of the Houthis. Following the conclusion of the conference, the aggressive expansion of the Houthis only continued to increase. Consequently, the sectarian expansionist continued in the area of the Hasht tribes in the Amran Governorate. This is where the Houthis took control on February 2, 2014, in the city of Al-Kamari, after fierce battles with the Hasht tribesmen. And in a move to retaliate against the sons of the Hasht for opposing Ali Saleh, the Al-Ammar family houses were bombarded and people displaced from the area. Their transgression continued with the siege of Amran and the targeting of Brigade 310, led by the martyr, Major General Hamid al-Qushaybi. Then, on July 9, 2014, the Couists took control of the entire Amran Governorate after an attack that displaced thousands of Yemenis. From Amran, the Houthi sectarian militias moved to barricade the capital Sana'a under the pretext of rejecting the decree to raise the price of oil. The siege and the assault on the country continued until the fall of Sana'a into the hands of the Couists. The situation further deteriorated after the coup d'etat in Sana'a. Heavy state-owned weaponry were looted and smuggled to Sada, and all security, intelligence and financial state agencies were occupied. The Houthis imposed their sectarian views in many mosques, Quran schools and universities. Furthermore, Islamic colleges were demolished due to their different beliefs. As the Couists continued attempts to impose their unyielding agenda, political and public life in the country became more complicated, and measures to activate the national dialogue initiatives remained at a standstill, the only one left being the adoption of the constitution. However, the Couists refused to agree on some of its terms, such as the federal system and the prevention of all military personnel from running in any election for a period of 10 years. The Couists used physical force to block the meeting of the Constitution Committee. They arrested the director of the President's office, President Abdurrab Mansour Hadi, and both he and the Prime Minister were forced to submit their resignations. They were put under house arrest, with various ministers denied any visitors. Meanwhile, the Houthis issued threats to invade Saudi Arabia and conducted operations on the Yemeni-Saudi border. Then they announced the establishment of a coup authority in the name of the Supreme Revolutionary Committee, followed by the dissolution of the House of Representatives, suspension of the Constitution, forcing the country into a state of constitutional uncertainty, with daily life severely disrupted. This was until President Hadi succeeded to escape his besieged home, reach Aden, and regain his role in running the country. The Couists continued their rebellion and began to wage wars in the southern and central regions of Yemen under false pretenses of fighting terrorists, infidels, and ISIS. Ali Saleh's forces, consisting of the Presidential Guard, Special Forces, and Central Security, allied with the Houthi and tribal militias, invaded the central and southern regions until they reached Aden. In a historic moment, President Hadi called for the support of his Arab brethren, forming the Arab coalition led by Saudi Arabia to resist the coup and stop the Iranian plot to control a fourth Arab country. Nearly all of Yemen fell into the hands of the Houthis in early 2015, until the intervention of Saudi Arabia which announced the formation of a coalition of 10 countries, codenamed Operation Decisive Storm, Asifat al-Hazm. The coalition began on the 26th of March 2015, when they bombed Houthi targets in targeted areas of Yemen. This was requested by the country's legitimate government to stop the progress of the Houthis, eliminate their rebellion, and restore the legitimacy recognized by the international community. Tragedy has befallen prosperous Yemen. Devastation, hunger and poverty has struck the country, and wherever the Couists directed their assaults, destruction has followed them, as they spread terror, panic and death throughout cities and villages. The Couists have violated all standards of human rights across Yemen.